None.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's presentation on rethinking waste for good, which is being presented by Joe Taranto from Good for the Hood. I am Gabby from Hunters Hill Council, and welcome to everybody. It's really lovely to see you here. This is part of our lunchtime learning series. Over to you, Joe.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Gabby, and thanks to Hunters Hill Council again for having me. This is a session today called Rethinking Waste for Good, and I'm really excited to share some of the wonderful things happening globally when it comes not just to waste, but to new models for our economy. So that's the journey we're going to go on today. I'm sure you're all very seasoned users of Zoom, but we are recording the event today. I have got live transcription enabled if that helps you, and a recording will be available for you to watch again or to share. If you also need any copies of the links, we do have a little flyer that can go out, and I'll share that as well with Gabby. So thank you, as we said, Hunters Hill Council of supporting this event today. We are also sharing you some information about where you can get more information about what council are doing when it comes to the circular economy, and also if this raises some questions for you about particular things in your area, they are, as always, the best source of local information and your source of truth when it comes particularly to things like waste. I'd also like to acknowledge that we are on Aboriginal land, and that I'd like to pay my respects to the people of the Wallumattagal, who are the country that I'm on today. If you are in Hunters Hill, you're also on Wallumattagal land, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present. And also welcome anyone who identifies as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander who joined us today. Today we are talking about waste, which is not everyone's always their favourite topic, but I promise to make it as exciting as this topic can be. And really, we're going to try to use the word waste a lot less and start talking about resources and opportunities, because that's really what waste is, and how we need to reframe it. And we're going to be talking about a new model of a new economic and commercial model and business model that we're going to see popping up a lot more, which is what we call the circular economy. And we're going to talk about how our community can possibly move towards more circularity and what that might mean for us now and in the future. As Gabby mentioned, I'm Joe Taranto. I've co-founded Good for the Hood, which is a community education and consultancy organisation that provides services to communities, to councils, and to organisations who are looking at lightening their footprint, are looking at connecting people and really helping people to create community change in the areas which our planet needs. I live in Ryde. I'm a very passionate community member here, and I've done a lot in the Hunters Hill community over the years as well. So this is my hood, and it's really great to be part of it today. We're really passionate about our 4 Ps, which is not just people, profit and planet, which are the basis of what living more sustainably is, but also place. How does this connect with the people and the solutions that we have locally? And we really build on the networks which our communities are really renowned for, the streets and the clubs and the associations and the organisations that make us strong. And we know that through COVID, that's been very, very tricky to maintain and support and sustain ourselves, let alone those organisations. So as we return to those things in a more normal way, there's so many opportunities that people, when they come together, can harness, and the circular economy is most certainly one of those. And I'm sure we're going to see lots of ways that we can do that. I have to start with a bit of an alarm bell, I guess, and talk about the fact that we have some problems, which is why we're here, and why we're here to talk about them, is that in Australia, we're some of the most wasteful people when it comes to consumption in the world. And waste is really a side effect of the way we consume. So if we were to measure our consumption as Australians by how many planets we used in 1 year, we would need 4.6 planets to sustain the everyday Australian. That is, we use 4.6 times the amount of renewable resources on the planet. So we can't keep, non-renewable resources on the planet. We can't keep living at the pace we live because we are depleting the world's resources at a rate that is just not even close to sustainable, unfortunately. But with that problem comes a massive opportunity, and that's what we're focusing on today. If we can harness ways of doing business and working better and harness resources which are truly renewable, then we have the opportunity to flip that on its head and not only create a more harmonious and regenerative planet, but actually to create a much more profitable and sustainable communities as well. Ones that create new jobs, new opportunities, new innovations, and ultimately ones that help us thrive on all areas of our communities. So it's a pretty exciting opportunity. I would like to know, first of all, I know a couple of you have mentioned that you joined other workshops, and I noticed we've got some wonderful community members here that I've got to know through my work with Hunters Hill Council. So I would like to know through our poll today what you yourself have heard about when it comes to the circular economy. So I've just launched a poll there to ask you, is this something that's completely new, or are you coming into this with a fair amount of background knowledge as well? Most people have heard the phrase when we talk to them about it, but beyond that, they're thinking, oh, I don't really know much more. So I'm interested to know. All right, so we've got, most people have heard it and understand a little bit. Fantastic. Well, hopefully after today, you can walk away with a few more bits that you can put in your toolkit when it comes to knowledge about waste and resource use. Because certainly it excites me, because I think we just see so many fantastic opportunities, as I said, for business and industry, as well as communities. I just lost my mouse, there we are. The good news in Australia is that we are very passionate about a few things when it comes to the environment. One of them is recycling. Australians are very, very passionate recyclers. They see it as a very core part of what they do. And about 9 out of 10 Australians think it is a really critical part of our system. Now, when you think a few years ago, we really didn't have recycling, and that wasn't something that we grew up with. As a kid, I know that we really had one bin, and that was how we managed our waste. So we've embraced recycling, we've embraced a change in our own behaviours. And what we know about the circular economy is that it's going to ask consumers and citizens to do things differently. We can't keep doing the things this way we've always done if we want the outcome to be different. The problem in Australia, as we know, and if you came to last week's session about recycling, is that we're not always very good at getting everything in the right bins at the right time. And with the circular economy, we're going to come up against challenges all the way along. So I preface all of these discussions about waste and our communities and what we're facing with the challenge that we are going to have to deal with imperfect systems and refine those. There's no perfect solution that I've seen in a community, and just because it works really well in one community doesn't mean that it's perfect for ours. So the nature of this is, because we're human beings and we make mistakes and we are a bit lazy sometimes, or we forget, is that we are going to come up against this challenge of human behaviour and how we change that. We know that in Australia, we are good at recycling some things and not so good at recycling others. And that's not as on us as consumers always. That's also about industry and commodity prices and the cost of separating certain items and processing certain items, and what the end market for those items actually is, and whether it's actually cheaper to use a virgin source of materials versus a recycled source, or whether there's downfalls to the using a recycled source for some of those things. But we do know that we attempt in Australia to recover resources, as much as possible, where we can, with the investment and the infrastructure we have. We also know that we don't manufacture things onshore the way we once did. So once we do have that commodity, a lot of it has to go offshore for production. So you can imagine that creates a huge issue when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions, logistics, and labour as well. So it's not an easy fix. But I wanted to understand what your frustration in Hunters Hill or in your community is, where you live, when it comes to waste. What is it that you see that frustrates the hell out of you? That thing that makes you feel really upset, or you feel is a lost opportunity, or the thing that you think I can't believe people do this. So if you want to share it in the chat, now's your chance to kind of exercise the demons, kind of lay off some of those frustrations, because we have a lot. And my personal one is council cleanups and seeing the beautiful items which go out on the verge, and then in the morning they're gone. And if I can't take it and I can't find someone else to take it, I get this really strong anxiety about, it's such a waste. I know it's going to landfill, and I know that the value that's in that item is going to be lost. So I want to know what your frustration is. Let us know via the chat. What do you wish people didn't throw away? What do you wish you didn't have to throw away because you don't know what else to do with it? And maybe what you might see an item being littered or dumped where just simply because people don't know or don't always do the right thing with that item. There's a lot of frustration with the amount of waste on overflowing, people throwing rubbish on the street. Yeah, that's absolutely a side effect of our consumption. Jamie, Carrie gets upset by plastic bags in the yellow bins. She takes them out where she can. So yep, great. We had a lot of that kind of grievance last week, Carrie, don't worry. Absolutely. So we all have that thing that upsets us. It can be small, it can be huge. But as soon as we start talking about waste, no matter what we talk about, people get quite passionate about it, because it can be an incredibly frustrating experience, especially once you start thinking about the inherent value that's in an item. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today. Carrie also mentioned plastic bottles in regular rubbish in parks. Yes. So when we talk about the circular economy, we're going to be talking about a framework, really. It's a system, it's a model, and it's a model of regenerative design and restoration of natural systems, and a transfer of the way materials flow. It really challenges the notion that the corporate world that we have created and the economies that we have created, robust as they may be, are based on the assumption that waste is a necessity, that we have to create waste because that's just what we do. We live in an industrialized society, and that waste is just a side effect of the way we live. The circular economy is saying, well, why is that? Waste is a construct that we created, that colonies in the industrialized world have created. This was not a part of First Nations peoples, the way they lived. This is natural systems don't have waste. So why do we have waste? Why have we created waste as a side effect of living? And why must our economy, as robust as it may be, rely on waste to survive? What if we could have both? A society that was strong and robust and economically strong, that designed out waste. So globally at the moment, our economy is about 8% or 9% circular, truly circular, i.e. it relies on designing out this waste product. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. And at the moment, unfortunately, there's a pretty big gap, and at times it goes down and up. What we're going to be talking about today is how we can move as close to 100% circular, whether that's truly possible or not, we don't know yet. But really, it's about decarbonising our industries as well. So when we talk about the circular economy, we're also going to be talking a switch to renewable energy. So if you're interested in sustainability and waste, and sometimes they cross over, the circular economy really is that space in between where we talk about renewable energy and designing out waste or using resources more efficiently. So for people like me who dork out on that stuff, it's pretty much the sweet spot for looking at more sustainable living across, this area of renewable energy and this other area of resource management. We also know that based on the IPCC report and what we need to do globally and the Paris Climate Accord is that we actually need a circular economy if we are going to meet our Paris climate commitments. So it's kind of a necessity. It's not just a nice to have anymore. But the concept behind it, and you'll often see this talked about, is that a linear economy where we mine a product or we create a product and manufacture it, use it for a short period of time, throw it in the bin and then put it into landfill, is incredibly costly in terms of environmental impact and costly in terms of the resources that we use. We know that a recycling economy, as we've transitioned to in the last sort of 30 to 40 years, at scale across most metropolitan communities, certainly, takes a lot of those items and takes them back into a processing and manufacturing systems, back into commodities and back into reprocessed and recycled content within a material. But we also know that within a recycling economy, as we talked about last week, there's a loss of value. So it's not a one-for-one. We don't get a glass bottle into a glass bottle anymore. It's a glass bottle into a road material, or it's a cardboard package from a food, Weet-Bix that have gone into creating a paper pulp, or it's a plastic bottle that's gone from food that's gone into a plastic bottle for detergent. We don't have the same value one-for-one. So a recycling economy ends up ultimately creating waste at the end. We do have a loss of value through the system. It's still really important, but there's a loss there. The circular economy looks at maintaining the value in the system for a lot longer. There can still be waste, but every attempt is made to design it out. So the flow of materials and the value in those materials stay in play. And the value in a material is not just what it's made of, it's also its function. So that we know that, gold is a very valuable material, but if it's in a ring, it's much more potentially valuable than if it's in an iPhone and there is gold in them, their iPhones. So we know that the value of something is not just what it's made of, but what it's used for as well. So when we think about waste and the circular economy, we often wonder why something becomes waste. Why does it no longer serve us? Often it's because it doesn't have any functional value anymore, or it's lost its material value. And a circular economy is ultimately about keeping both. Often we have a time in our life where we don't need something anymore, and that's when we need to move it on. So a circular economy is about keeping that item in flow, even if we're not using it anymore. So when we talk about the circular economy, we need to understand this woman who is a pretty powerhouse a package, really, when it comes to global change makers. So this is Dame Ellen MacArthur. She's only a little bit older than me. And she is sort of the founding force between the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is the global voice for the circular economy. And she's really forcing the hand of brands, governments, industry associations, politicians, to start thinking about this take, make, dispose system which we've created. Now, she was a yachtsman. She was the first, she was an English yachtsman. I'm sure she still gets out there, but she set the world record in 2005 for the fastest solo non-stop voyage around the world, and she did it in her first attempt. And then about 5 years later, she's like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to disrupt the global economy instead. So she's pretty amazing. And she's just basically said that we've got to do something. This is ridiculous. We are taking finite things, using them for a finite period, and then putting them back in the earth for an infinite amount of time. Why? And from there, since 2010, there's been this real disruption of starting to actually say, yeah, actually, that makes no sense. Why have we done it that way? So that's where this force is kind of coming from. Now, when you look at the foundations of what a circular economy is, it relies on three things. And I've talked a little bit about them already, but ultimately it's about designing out waste and pollution. So we know manufacturing, mining, all industries create both waste and pollution. Pollution in the form of greenhouse gases, runoff, chemicals, waste in the form of offcuts, sediment, all types of post-manufacturing and sort of supply chain waste that comes through. We also know that a circular economy keeps products at its maximum value. So if a cotton shirt was made, we want to keep a cotton shirt as a cotton shirt for as long as possible. We know that in our house, once that shirt has a stain and, or it's torn or the kids have grown out of it, you start to look at it differently. It's not that amazing shirt that was the one you took all that extra effort and energy to care for. And at some point along the line, it becomes a rag or it becomes, a waste product. So the circular economy in the simplest form is about keeping an item that was made in its form that it was made in, so that's where the value stays for as long as possible. And then once it no longer can be that thing, moving it into a food for the next cycle. And these cycles in the circular economy are based on natural systems. So looking at soil systems, looking at, organic systems that don't have harmful side effects and impacts themselves, but are part of regenerative systems within the natural environment. So we're going to use some examples to hopefully highlight this, but if you go on the website for Ellen MacArthur Foundation, you will be completely overwhelmed by the sheer scale and magnitude of what a transition into a completely new economic model means. Down to the level that I feel most comfortable with, because when I first embarked on this journey, I was like, this is a lot. So it's not a simple thing. It's not a simple transition we're looking at, but hopefully feeling like you've got a little bit more understanding after today. So because it's an economic model, it's based on business models. It's based on looking at the way the flow of materials come in and out of the system. And the circular economy has said there are certain things we do really well in our economy, but you know what? There's certain things that we could actually do differently, which would keep those fundamental elements of the circular economy, that designing out waste, keeping things at highest value, regenerating natural systems, and still provide an economic benefit to the community. So these are the 5 business models which have been looked at within a circular economy, and they're a little bit different to the typical I buy it, I own it, I get rid of it system. And this is not just for people who are consumers, but for people who are manufacturing and creating items and the way that they purchase and buy things as well. So we're going to go through them quickly to give you an idea of the way that we may see businesses operate in the future. And we're already starting to see them operate differently now. First of all is about circular supply. So we see that now. It's about, instead of taking virgin plastics and diesel and petrol based fuels and using electricity, which is from a coal-fired power plant, what if we used recycled content, bio-based fuels and renewable energy to fuel the supply chain? Because automatically I'm not getting the greenhouse gases, I'm not having to deplete coal and oil reserves, I'm not having to create these immense environmental impacts just to create products that I need. So it's all about reducing that virgin resource extraction. And there's lots of ways it's already happens now. We know that brands like Coca-Cola are looking at putting recycled plastic in their bottles. We know that a lot of brands are relying on renewable energy. We know that, we're seeing widespread transition about, bio-based fuels and recovery of fuels. We know that, olive oil manufacturers are fueling their systems, burning the pit from the olives that they've, we're starting to look at people thinking, why do I need to take something that's never been used before and create the waste and pollution when I've already got something I can use? So it's about looking at your supply chain, where you're getting your stuff, and finding a way that you can use goods within your supply chain. Resource recovery is a model we're very familiar with, because that is exactly what recycling is, taking items which would otherwise go to landfill and bringing them back into the system. So the idea is that we're really trying to avoid that valuable item not being of value. So as soon as we burn our waste or put it in the ground and cap it, we've lost the value that it holds. So it's about pulling those items out before they get to landfill, either by sorting them into our recycling, putting them in our return and earn, composting, or pulling out our food organics and garden organic waste, not letting those resources go to waste. Some of my favourite models within the circular economy come back to what really strong communities do well: sharing. So we know that share models within the circular economy are really, really exciting, not just for citizens, but for businesses. So why do businesses need to have all of this plant and all of this equipment that sit there only being used half the time, when a business next door might be able to link into their system and share that item between them? Why do we all have to have 50,000 hedge trimmers and garden equipment in our garages that we use 6 times a year, when we could access equipment and within our community and our neighborhoods? And GoGets and car share systems are great examples of share models. We see them popping up in communities a lot. Share libraries, tool libraries, street libraries with books, and in fact, any library where we borrow an item. I don't need to own it. I can share it with you, and we can have a model which allows us to not only keep the value in the system, but to have access and equity to those products as well. A really exciting area is this product as a service, and you're seeing this a lot in industry, that people are creating maybe a fridge, and they don't actually, the company that makes the fridge doesn't actually own all of the components within it anymore. At the end of that fridge life, I will take your fridge back. I will give the components back to the company that owns the components, and they will either remanufacture or dispose of them. So this whole model of, I used to go and buy all of the things that go into the product I make, and then I sell it, and it's someone else's problem to get rid of, is going to change over time. We're going to see a lot more responsibility on the manufacturers of products to take back their products, not just because they're good people, but because there's going to be an economic benefit to doing that. We're going to see a lot more, lighting companies putting in lights and then coming and taking the lights back out at the end of that time, maybe on a 10-year or 5-year lease or whatever it's going to be, because there's going to be an inherent value for them to take those items back. And suddenly the onus is not on us to dispose of the items. We have that product as a service from that lighting service provider, as opposed to buying the light bulb and we own the light bulb now, which is a huge shift. And it comes from this, instead of becoming an owner of an item, you become a user of an item. So it's a shift from ownership to usership. And finally, this model of improving the life extension of an item. So we know that when we get an iPhone or any phone these days, that there's this kind of obsolescence, which we've become to quite, almost to expect. It's quite laughable at times how quickly things, don't last. Every time you update software on a technology, every time you repair an item, every time you service your car, you're extending the life of your product. So that's a really critical thing for us to maintain the value and keep items functioning at their maximum, purpose. But also, we have a really important role of repairing and restoring items as well as they break down. Now, that whole right to repair movement has had a real resurgence because people are getting very frustrated with the fact that when they buy an item, they can't easily repair it. They can't access the little components. They can't, take it to someone who knows how to fix it because it's so complicated and no one can even get in it. And as soon as you do, the warranty is now invalid. So that whole model has really received a lot of criticism. That's been designed in to kind of take away this kind of capacity for us to do that. So for us to have a truly circular economy, that has to change. We can't have this speed of obsolescence that we do in our current lives. So when we understand all of that, that's a lot. We understand that the circular economy really isn't about just one company or one council or one government changing one thing. Because if that is all that changes, we know that they might change their business model, but at some point they're going to come up against a pretty major barrier, whether it's trade or whether it's access to supply chains or whether it's access to the right commodities. As soon as you start this, you can only get so far if you're going alone. So we know that for this to work, this has to be a global shift because we all rely now on a very globalized economy. So Ellen MacArthur's Foundation has been very strong in advocating for the fact that this is going to require a global transition. And, the good thing is that it does align with what a lot of international and OECD countries are kind of aware of in terms of their obligations anyway. So here in New South Wales, I've been really lucky to be working with a couple of organisations. One was Hunters Hill Council and one was also New South Wales Circular. And looking at this from what it means for citizens, it's become quite obvious that we can't do it alone and that it's a lot to transition. So this is just what New South Wales Circular, so just the New South Wales government and the industries associated with it are looking at to try and get this to happen here. What kind of researchers do we need? What kind of, organisations, universities, manufacturers do we need to kind of take items? How do we know what we can do with? We've never recycled a solar panel before. Who's going to take that? What components, what equipment do we need that we don't actually have yet? How do we get the scale of being able to take the items that are required to be taken back? What kind of policy changes do we need? Do we need more legislation to support right to repair? Do we need, levies and kind of, subsidies to help certain industries get a leg up so that they can compete? What kind of infrastructure do we need? Do we need more bins or do we need collection areas? Do we need public, RVMs and reverse vending machines in our squares? Do we need places to go and repair and drop items back? We know that, when IKEA's talked about returning furniture back to them to repair, the sheer size of space that people would need to bring items back to the store, when you think about it, is huge. What do we need industry to do? How do we need them? Do we need them to collaborate? Do they need to set up guidelines? And what kind of investment do we need from financiers? Because ultimately, this is an economic model and it thrives on the fact that things have to be economically viable to work. And then ultimately, what do you and I have to do differently? How are we going to interact with the things we buy and return and exchange those? Is it not going to be about putting things in the bin anymore? What is it going to require of me? And I already know that, I already do a lot more than I used to do in my life, but it's a lot. It's an exhausting process to have, different places to put things and to remember, where do I take that item? Is that on a Tuesday? They're not open yet. Put it in the car. It sits there for 2 weeks. It's a lot. So what is the onus going to be on citizens, and how do we make it easier for people to exchange those goods and to keep those items in flow? The good news is the opportunity has been quantified in New South Wales, and that we know that every time we recycle or remanufacture, there's 3.3 jobs in that, as opposed to 1 job in landfill. We also know that it's $1 billion opportunity for not just New South Wales, but for Australia. So we know there's an opportunity there, and there's a lot of interest in it because of that. New South Wales now has its first chief circular economist as well. So we've got a strong push looking at how a circular economy can benefit us, particularly post COVID, when we're all going to be kind of rubbing our eyes and stepping out into the world again. I always like to acknowledge that when any adoption of change and innovation, that we really need to accept that this is kind of, we're at the forefront of the early adopters. We're kind of maybe moving into, a few more people getting into this and mainstreaming of these concepts, but it is not a widely recognized kind of thing yet. We haven't got to a point where everyone's just like, well, hang on, my supply chain, I haven't really got circularity yet. It's not part of our everyday discussions yet, but it will be, and it will be at speed. So if you run a business, or if you're involved in a particular industry, there's going to be, this conversation needs to be had somewhere, if not at your industry body, within your organization. And if you're in procurement and looking at where you get things, that this has got to be on the radar somewhere. So just to be aware, it's a coming. So I guess I wanted to just use an example, and it is really hard, as you can imagine, to simplify this to one example. But this is what the global fashion industry have done when it comes to looking at jeans, looking at denim jeans, and how we might transition a very, very damaging and costly industry from to a circular industry that is far less damaging to both planet and actually the people who work in the industry as well. So I just wanted to share a little bit. For the last couple of years, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation have been working with a number of fashion houses and cotton growers and people who launder and create jeans. And I just want to share a little bit of how they've approached it. To give you an example of the magnitude and size, and also exciting opportunities that present themselves when it comes to transitioning an industry like the denim jean industry. So when you think about any item that's created, you really have to look at the raw material of where it's come from, and that can go right back to the sun that grows the cotton, to the water that goes on the cotton and the soil that the cotton's grown in, through to where the item ends up, into landfill in metropolitan Sydney, and all of the steps in between. So that we know when we're creating something, there's an immense process, and we know that the water alone that goes into making a pair of jeans is immense. So how do you remotely try to change not just one brand, because when you think of how many denim jean brands that you have in your life alone, let alone how many there are in the world and where they're all made in different countries around the globe, that's no mean feat. So this is some of the work that was looked at. Basically, jeans create huge amounts of pesticides, water, land clearing, energy to harvest and process cotton into feedstock. There's the process of transport and the metals that go into the components. There's the huge scale of emissions that are created just to get the thing around the country and around the world. And as a side effect of that, you've got not just that waste at the end of the jeans, but you've got all the offcuts, the dyes, the water waste, the sludge, the chemical discharge, the waste that comes through the retailers, whether it's online or in store, the logistical nightmare and scale of the scope 3 emissions that are created just to get the thing into our stores and then to our doors and then on us. And then ultimately, when we've decided we've had enough of that item, putting it in the bin or sending it to Vinnie's. And ultimately, at some point, it will end up in a bin somewhere. So it's quite a journey. And when you think about it in terms of the way our planet is designed, it's a system that's quite alien in terms of the natural systems. So when the Ellen MacArthur Foundation went out to 72 separate organisations, 31 brands, 26 garment manufacturers, 21 fabric mills, and 9 laundries, and they did this across 20 countries. And they got them to sign up to a set of minimum guidelines. It sounds really simple, but they said, right, if we are going to put more circularity into the way we manufacture jeans, we need to at the very least, commit to doing some of these things. So some of these are guidelines and some of these are side effects of those guidelines. I'll just run through a couple of them. They said to them, you need to use post-consumer cellulose. There's no point taking brand new grown cotton and using it every time you make a pair of jeans. You've got the cotton in those jeans that you've already created, use that. Please remove old processes like sandblasting or pumicing jeans or stonewashing them, because all you are doing is devaluing the quality of that cotton material so that when we come and bring it back next time, we can't use it because it is broken down to a point that it's no longer good enough to be worn as a jean. So simply by saying to them, don't sandblast jeans anymore, which, if you're a child of the 70s, you probably think, no, not to mention acid washing and other things. And also they were saying, when you look at the physical impacts on the humans who are creating those jeans, the impact of sandblasting is an incredibly damaging process industrially for people who work in there and the health and safety of those workers. Looking at the renewable energy used in factories, looking at using regenerative soil, so putting the cotton waste back onto the soil and actually seeing if that makes a difference in putting organic matter back into the soil that's growing the cotton. Looking at water reuse initiatives, phasing out chemicals which aren't safe. So they're saying, why would you use a chemical which is just damaging to people and the planet when there are alternatives? So just stop using potassium permanganate because it's just a horrible chemical. Please stop using it. Design out that pollutant. We don't need it. There are other ways of doing it. So some of the brands were like, okay, great. And some of them said, well, we're actually hearing back from our people that the people will buy our jeans, and if they don't fit properly, they're not even going to wear them. So what if we designed an on-demand body scan feature, which actually enabled a custom pair of perfect jeans for that person? So when they got it and it was made, for, custom to that person, then they know it's going to fit them. And you don't have that issue of getting the jeans that you think are a size 12 and going, well, actually, it's not even close, and getting rid of it before you even started. Looking at laser finishing. So how can we actually finish it without having to create waste and finish it properly without needing to add additional items to the jeans? Then there were a whole bunch of other brands that said, well, why don't we just lease people jeans? They don't have to actually own them. They can just rent them from us, and when they don't want it anymore, they can give it back to us. Or if fashion changes so much, that skinny jeans are no longer cool, which I'm told they're not, we can suddenly just transition to, a slightly wider leg, and no one's going to care because they don't own it. They're just going to start hiring out or leasing the other items. A lot of them were re-commercing jeans within their own platform. So they're selling not only their brand new jeans, but you can also buy a secondhand item through the same platform, or you can get it repaired. You can take it to one of our repairers who know exactly how to fix our pair of jeans, and they're certified, repairers of our jeans. So you're not worried about it looking crappy when you get it back. Or if you're finished with your jeans, just take it back in the store and we'll take it back. We'll take it. We want it because we actually need that for our next pair of jeans. They also said that if you remove all of the, metal rivets and buttons and zippers, or made them be able to be removed, putting a rivet in a jean was a really damaging practice, because as soon as you try to rip that up into make that cellulose again, the rivets were just breaking the machine. So they're saying, can we just make them without rivets? Is it actually essential that we have these ridiculous rivets in jeans? So you'll see a lot of jeans these days don't have them, which is a change in fashion, but also just a deliberate change in terms of sustainability. And then maybe we can look at electrifying our fleet and our logistics and all of that. So that's just a pair of jeans. Now I can tell you the denim jean industry is by no means circular. This is a fraction of industry globally, but this is what they all have to do to rethink their waste. And it's a process that every brand, every product is going to have to go through for us to live truly sustainably. So if that doesn't make you feel a little bit overwhelmed by the scale of not only the problem, but the opportunity, that's what we're looking at. So I just want to give you some quick examples in the next little bit, and then you can ask some questions. These are some of the things where you will see circularity in your community in Hunters Hill right now. I've given some local examples, so hopefully some of them you'll recognise. And then I'm going to share with you some ways that communities can be circular without buying anything, just simply by looking at those practices of sharing, repairing and caring. So here's some things in your community which already have circularity. So we know that reusable cups and that act of reuse is an important part of the circular economy. This is the Huskies cup, which is in the cafes around the community in Hunters Hill. Obviously, not many cafes are probably doing reusables at the moment, but when they do, you can pick up a cup like this and participate in that system. Now, this product itself actually is made from a proportion of coffee husk waste, which is a material that otherwise would be a side effect of production of coffee overseas. By putting the coffee husk into the product, what they've done is actually create a whole new economic stream for farmers of the coffee beans, and taken that waste concept and embedded it into the plastic composite. So it really is a circular product by design, but also its value in terms of what it does as well and function. Now, a lot of your schools in Hunters Hill are looking at using Worn Up, which is a return of school uniforms, and they're participating in a circular cotton project in Goondiwindi. So they're shredding the cotton and putting it back onto the farm, as well as making products, which you'll see. So we all know how much waste school uniforms can create. A fantastic opportunity to take back those items when they're no longer able to be used at their highest value, and still create some value in the supply chain. And this is Defy Design. They're based in, I always get confused, Marrickville. And they are a micro factory with about 6 staff. And they reprocess plastic shampoo bottles from sustainable salons and recreate items in their micro factory there. So create, that's a dog a handle for taking your dog for a walk with the lead. They take things like coasters. Now, this plastic wasn't readily being recycled in the market, and so it's enabled them to create jobs and also a new industry locally. They're also taking stationery waste from all the factories which surround them, the old plastic separators from foolscap folders and that sort of stuff. Most of us would be familiar with TerraCycle and REDcycle, taking those hard to recycle products back. We just go and drop our plastic bags back. We drop off our Nespresso pods, or our maybe our L'Oreal bottles, or whatever it is. So those brands have a relationship with TerraCycle or REDcycle, and they're allowing them to collect those items and have a relationship with the recyclers, which are taking them back. it's a great way of creating single stream processing for difficult items. The onus at the moment is on the people collecting them to pay for that, but there are associated benefits financially for them to do that as well, and also brand awareness and enabling people to return to the store to drop something off. Oh, and while I'm there, I'll go and buy some milk. So it certainly makes it easier for the consumer. This is the UNSW Smart Centre. It's based at Randwick, and this is the fit out for the new building of Mirvac's Pavilion Apartments at Sydney Olympic Park. So those walls are made out of e-waste, glass and plastic from e-waste. And you'll also see this in a second in another little fit out that Hunters Hill Council have done. But this is the future of ceramics and bench tops and tiles. There's no reason why we have to use, stone or materials that we've had to create in a factory when we can use other waste items to create a very similar and very aesthetically pleasing material. So, Mirvac's been looking at how they can fit out apartments. It's only sort of the tip of the iceberg there. And certainly a lot of people are very excited about this opportunity because they're really unique pieces, and you can sort of see the filament of textiles in there as well. One of probably the oldest circular economy models in Sydney is the Bower, taking back items, repairing them, teaching the community to repair them, enabling us to give items a good home. Hunters Hill Council has a relationship with the Bower. You can book a collection. It can take a little bit of time because they are, a charity that's doing their best, but they are a fantastic organisation. And they really are built on those principles of keeping items at their highest value and enabling people access and equity to really wonderful pieces of unique pieces of furniture and homewares. And here's three others. So we've got our return and earn facility down at Henley Community Centre. You can go and drop off your bottles. Single stream recycling is crucial to a circular economy because it enables high value commodities to go back into the system. You can also drop large items off at 5 Dock to the Citizen Blue Depot if you need to, or at Lane Cove. When they're open, just check. At the moment, it's all been a bit fruity with all the COVID restrictions. And Yarra Sale Trail, getting people to keep high value, interesting items at in circulation. If you don't want to use it, someone else might want to buy it. And I'm sure Hunters Hill have done the fancy flea and those sorts of things. There's no reason why secondhand has to mean less than some of these brand new items. There's some amazing pieces that you can pick up with gorgeous stories, and we know that vintage is definitely still very relevant today as much as it's ever been. So again, we just got to get through a pandemic. So this is the yarn at 64 Gladesville Road next to the Hunters Hill Hotel. You'll see that familiar speckled bench top there. That's also been made out of the UNSW's e-waste. That's the green ceramics. And there's also within that some beautiful school uniforms and sports uniforms from All Saints and Riverside Girls, all been shredded up and embedded in that bench top. It's such an amazing thing. It looks and feels like a tile, but it really is kind of that next level circular economy principle of remanufacture and keeping a circular supply. You can also drop off hard to recycle small items there, or you can take them to the community recycling facility. Now, it's not open at the moment, again, so just pause for a little bit longer until we can get back out in the community and then drop off those items so that they can be enabled back into that circular economy. And you as consumers can become, producers of waste and back into that circular supply as well. If you want some more excitement and things that can sort of stimulate your brain, and if this has kind of unlocked anything for you, I'd encourage you to look at the Circle Awards. It's the first Circular Economy Business Awards and Community Awards that were launched this year. But the finalists are really quite exciting, and you might be surprised by what is considered a circular business model, because some of them aren't always about this whole recycling and remanufacture concept. And also the ACE Hub, which is Planet Ark's circular economy hub for Australia, shares some really great stories, what schools are doing, what communities are doing, what councils are doing in this area. And Corio is a consultancy in Brisbane doing great things, particularly with industry and mining. So if that's your thing, then certainly, check them out as well. Now, I'm going to show some pictures in a sec while I take your photo. I won't take any questions, not photos. I don't know why I'm taking photos. But I'll show you some photos while we take some questions in a sec, which will be some examples of what you can also do as community members. But I guess I just wanted to say that ultimately for me, circularity as a citizen is really about caring. And that might seem very simplistic, but this has been the way that I've, with my work that I've been doing through New South Wales Circular, I've come to really think is a pretty special one, because it ultimately is about caring enough about our community, because we recognise we actually can't keep living like we do. It's about caring for the places we live and the region and the area and the rivers and the land, but also it's about caring for the things we own and recognising that everything has a value, and that by taking care of things and caring enough about where we put things after we are finished with them, can enable us to really care for this sort of shared ecology that we all have as humans of this planet. So it really is about taking this kind of concept of getting rid of it and recognizing that there is no rid of it. It's here with us, and that thing we're throwing out is actually a resource, and that waste is a construct that we actually don't need in our world anymore. So I'm going to flick through. If anyone's got any questions they'd like to ask specifically about circularity or anything else they know where they can see that there's some really great things being done. But this hopefully will get you excited about some other ways you can get involved. No questions yet, so that's good. These are boomerang bag communities all over Australia. You can find one locally who's sewing bags from textile waste and putting them out. We know street libraries, you can also look up where they are in your community. Repair cafes, there's one in Sydney North. There's also the ones through the Bower. You can go and get jewellery, appliances, fabric, clothes, furniture, reupholstered for, you know, and learn how to do it while you're there, which is pretty cool. One of my favourite little spaces down in Melbourne is the Carlton Kitchen Library, where they have dehydrators and, you know, pasta makers and, you know, all the ridiculous appliances we have in the back of the cupboard, and we go, oh, I should really use that thing. And we use it like once a year, if that. So you can go in and hire it when you do want to make pasta for, you know, Nonna, and then you can take it back and accept that, you know, you're probably not going to do that for at least another 12 months. But they also teach people while they're there. And then this has provided amazing employment and opportunities for people who, you know, from migrant communities to share their cultural and, you know, beautiful food practices as well and recipes. Men's sheds, a great example of the circular economy, even though they might not consider themselves pioneers, they are the pioneers of repair and rethinking what we see as waste, especially with all that big brown furniture that we no longer seem to want to keep in our homes anymore. An amazing social outlet as well. We know that really men's sheds weren't invented to give hobbies to these guys. It was about, you know, providing them a space and place to be and feel useful. So and connect with mental health and well-being. So yeah, a fantastic initiative. I've got a great comment there from Carrie about the right to repair. Community gardens, you've got a gorgeous one at Henley. So great place to take food scraps to drop offs, hard to recycle items, and local food practices obviously play a part in the circular economy as well, as do flea markets, as do composting locally. If you don't have a compost heap, getting into a share waste community is a great one as well. So thank you, Jamie. That's great. So this is what you can do. I want you to keep talking about this. This is actually critical that we talk about circularity, and I think hopefully this might help you, Carrie. Anything practical you can do on a household level for the right to repair. Absolutely. When it comes to specific brands and stuff, Carrie, then contact them. We know that businesses only need to hear from about 20 customers before they actually start to listen to the same complaint over and over. It's not a lot of people that has to say, hey, not okay. So if you've got a specific concern, obviously writing to a politician if it's a particular political issue that needs change in the policy issue. Being a really good recycler is part of the circular economy, really critical. Conscious consumption, if there's such a thing, is critical. And also supporting new and innovative business models. That's critical that we help people who are trying to give this a go. We know that there's going to be some disruption in business as usual to get some of these models up. So, support these new ideas of, oh, this is a bit weird, never done this before. Great, give it a go. It's not always going to be perfect, but we actually have to disrupt the system if we want to see new models emerge. Buy from organisations who are using recycled content, who are telling you they're using renewable energy or have switched to green power. Critical for the circular economy. Support the electrification of communities and industry. If you can, switch to solar and green power yourself. And that renewable energy conversation is, again, a really critical part of the circular economy. And then tap into your local stuff. You've got some great things in your community already. If you don't think you've got enough, get involved and help create them. But it really is about creating local solutions to big global problems. So I can't emphasize that enough. That even if we switch, require all of us locally to do things differently. There's some more information about waste on Hunters Hill website if you need to go there through the QR code. I know I've smashed through that quickly at the end, as always. I really want you all to get a bit excited. The solutions and opportunities here are massive and really kind of opening up a whole bunch of doors for innovators, startups, new businesses, new supply chains. And to be honest, it's incredibly exciting to be part of. So if you ever get upset about the climate crisis, this is the antidote. It is really kind of tapping into what's being done is what will keep you thinking, no, it's okay, we're gonna get this. So yeah, I want to thank Hunters Hill Council again for allowing this conversation to happen, and hopefully we'll get a few more people having a look. Share this link with people if you get it and you think they'd be really interested in this, send it on, and I'm sure Gabby will send that out to you in the next little while.
I will indeed. Thank you, Jo. That was fascinating as always. Really,
just
really
a quick
interesting
economic model shift in an hour. Easy.
As one does. It was fabulous. So on behalf of Hunters Hill Council, thank you so much for doing that. And hopefully we can all move forward with all of those ideas. I will send out the link to the video recording of this when it's available. And we'll also stick it up on the Hunters Hill Council website as well. There are a couple more of these workshops coming up. There's another 2 that Jo is presenting. There's also the gardening workshop. So there's one on compost, which I think is next week. And there's also the making kokedama balls, and there's the 2 that Jo is doing. And this afternoon we have the Love Your Local series as well. So that's on using social media for your business. So that will also be really good. So please go to the Hunters Hill events page on www.huntershill.nsw.gov.au/events. And there's lots happening there, and you can keep in touch with us through there as well. So once again, thanks, Jo.
Great. Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.